Hello and welcome to African Elements. I'm Darius Spearman. In this episode, what is politics and what defines the experience of Black folks within political structures? How does racism factor into that experience? We begin our exploration of Black politics and anti-Black politics right now. Thank you for watching African Elements. If you're new to this channel, we produce content for Africana and Black studies that's accessible to students in the classroom and lifelong learners outside the classroom. We've got lots of free and subscription-based content on our webpage, so if that's something you might get some value out of, consider supporting us on Patreon at the link right up here. Otherwise, a like and subscribe would also be greatly appreciated. Be sure to hit that bell icon so that you'll be notified when new content drops. Let's get started with the basics. What is politics? For the purpose of this video, politics refers to the shaping and distribution of power. The most common expression of shaping and distribution of power that most often comes to mind is the act of determining who will have the ability to set policies and represent a specific group of constituents, or more simply, the act of voting. But beyond voting, there are so many more forms of political engagement. How you dress, how you wear your hair, how you shop, where you don't shop. Everything from music to art and where and how you travel, all of these things, if done for the shaping and distribution of power, can be political acts. If you use your imagination, practically anything, even a prank, can be an expression of political activism. So if politics is the shaping and distribution of power, then what is power? The most common political definition of power is simply the ability to get a person or group of people to do something that that person or group would not otherwise do. For those of you who are viewing this series as part of a course requirement, for example, if you would not otherwise be viewing this video, then your instructor is exercising a certain degree of power. That power is based on your desire to fulfill some requirement or pass a test that the instructor has control over. In turn, you as students also collectively hold a certain degree of power. If your instructor is not performing adequately, you can exercise your power to get your instructor to change his or her behavior by addressing those issues with the department chair or dean, or by leaving a review. If you understand the ways in which political systems work, then the variety of ways in which you can exercise power are bound only by your creativity. This web series is aimed at just that, understanding how political systems work so that you can best decide the methods that you use in order to harness your power and affect the change that you would like to see in the world. One of the main features of the political system that we'll be exploring is anti-Black politics, which systematically limits the degree to which Black folks can exercise power. In other words, a major component in the shaping and distribution of power as it relates to Black folks is racism. For the purpose of this video, racism will be defined as decisions and policies that have the impact of subordinating a racial group and maintaining control over it, whether it's intended or unintended. That last bit is important. Notice here that the definition of racism that we'll be operating under does not require the subordination of a racial group to be intentional, nor does it require that the subordination be an act of malice. Racism in a political sense goes far beyond what we typically view as racist groups such as the Ku Klux Klan or neo-Nazis. The definition that we'll be using also doesn't necessarily concern itself with the actions of individuals. For example, a poor white person screaming a racial epithet at me has little or no ability to influence my behavior or get me to do something that I would not otherwise do, which is to simply go about my day. Such an individual therefore has little or no power over me. Conversely, one doesn't have to be a member of a hate group or hurl racial epithets in order to engage in anti-Black politics. In fact, many anti-Black policies come from people who think themselves liberal, fair-minded folks, who would be the first to say that they abhor hate groups such as the Ku Klux Klan and readily condemn them. And I believe them. Consider, for example, college admissions and the politics which determines whether you have the ability to attend the university of your choice. Among fair-minded people, the political discourse over the past generation has centered around the notion of merit. But who decides who's deserving of admission and who lacks merit? More importantly, who decides what constitutes merit? Those who push SAT and GPA scores, for example, believe these are objective, fair measures of merit, and that minimizing these measures would give an unfair and unearned advantage to minority students, a notion often referred to as reverse racism. The perception of a meritocracy remains, even though it's been demonstrated repeatedly, for example, that the SAT test is a better predictor of family income than it is of success of first-year freshmen in college. Other measures of merit, such as personal narratives, give a better overall picture of the student and what he or she brings to the academic community. Such measures are often looked at as non-meritocratic, even though repeated studies have shown that there's value in having a diverse range of experiences that students bring to bear in the classroom and the academic community. Similarly, GPA scores carry many of the same racial biases. The use of honors classes and the extra weight given of 5 points on a 4-point scale means that students in schools that offer such classes gain an advantage. Coincidentally, those schools happen to be in more wealthy districts. A report issued by the Harvard Civil Rights Project observed that school integration was at the same level in 2004 as it was in 1969. As such, African Americans who are still segregated in less wealthy districts are being penalized simply because their schools don't offer them the opportunity to earn extra grade points, and as a result, African American students who might have a 4.0 grade point average may be competing with students from other districts who have a 4.1, 4.2, or 4.3 GPA on a 4-point scale. As we'll see, who controls the narrative, or who has the ability to say what constitutes merit and what doesn't constitute merit, has the ability to exercise a great deal of power. It's important here to note that when I speak of racism, I'm not necessarily talking about individuals wearing white sheets and hoods. I'm speaking of individuals and institutions that put in place policies that have the impact of subordinating a particular racial group regardless of intention. So, Black politics is the purposeful activity of Black people to use and acquire and maintain power, whereas the policies and laws of anti-Black politics maintain dominant structures and institutions of white privilege, again, whether it's intended or not. We have clear examples of explicitly anti-Black politics in the antebellum period of the United States that stripped Black slaves of anything resembling legal recognition of their humanity and severely limited the freedoms of Blacks who were non-slaves. After the Civil War, there were explicit policies to limit the freedoms of newly liberated Blacks in the form of Black codes, among other things. For more information about that, check out the video linked above. But suffice it to say that there was no attempt to even pretend that these Black codes were anything other than a collection of anti-Black laws. I mean, it's in the name. But what if the intention was not so explicitly stated? Take the drug war, for example. It's been widely reported that one of former President Richard Nixon's top advisors, John Ehrlichman, revealed that it was an intentional policy on the part of the Nixon administration to heavily criminalize drugs as a way of targeting both the anti-war movement and Blacks specifically. I'll leave the link below to one of these articles in the description. Now, in this case, we have a clear acknowledgement that this set of drug policies was specifically intended to target Blacks, but usually that's not going to be the case. Just as no police officer would be foolish enough to state, "because you're Black," as a reason for pulling you over. So, for the purpose of this example, let's pretend this information didn't come to light, and we have no idea what Nixon's intentions were. In fact, let's just give him the benefit of the doubt and assume that his intentions were purely out of a genuine concern for curbing drug use, and that he had no idea that these drug policies were going to disproportionately impact Blacks. Hypothetically, would that mean that the drug war is not an example of anti-Black politics? Well, let's go back to our definition of racism. Based on our definition of racism, intention is irrelevant. What is relevant is the impact, which clearly had a disproportionately negative effect on Black people. Based on that impact, the drug war was clearly an example of anti-Black politics. What are some other examples of anti-Black politics? I'd love to see your insights in the comments below. I'll be back for another episode very soon, where we'll discuss the crucial ingredient in exercising power: freedom. We'll talk about what freedom is and how Black people can obtain it. In the meantime, If you'd like to support this work, consider subscribing to African Element's Patreon page at the link above. A subscription of just $1 a month would go a long way towards helping to keep these videos coming. Also, if you get any value out of these videos, a like and subscribe would be greatly appreciated. Until next time, thanks for watching.